Welcome to Historyporium, the series where we dive into some of history's least known stories and take a look at some truly fascinating characters. Our star today is Sister Elizabeth Barton, a Catholic nun who had some pretty outrageous prophecies about the marriage of Henry VIII and his bit on the side Anne Boleyn. Born in 1506 near Canterbury in southeast England, Elizabeth came from a pretty poor background. She doesn't appear in any historical records until Easter 1525, when she was 19 years old and working as a domestic servant. One day, she fell seriously ill with a mysterious affliction and suffered alternating bouts of seizures and paralysis, during which Elizabeth claimed to receive divine visions on a variety of religious and personal topics, from the 7 deadly sins through to the deaths of children in her household. Elizabeth suddenly felt her religious calling, so in 1526 she joined a convent in Canterbury. By this time, some of her predictions had come true, and word had got out that she had the ability to foresee future events. She went the medieval equivalent of viral. Thousands of people would gather to listen to her talk about her visions. In one of her audiences was a bishop named Thomas Cranmer, who told his religious chums all about her epic fortune-telling skills. Elizabeth's notoriety was spreading further every day, and soon her visions would catch the attention of some powerful members of society. Around the same time in 1527, King Henry VIII had decided that his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, had passed her use-by date. He wanted a fresh face that could bore him a son, and he rather liked the look of one of the ladies in his court, Anne Boleyn. After falling in love with her beguiling beauty, he instructed his advisors to begin exploring methods for getting a divorce. By 1528, Elizabeth had become known as the Holy Maid of Kent and began to experience more visions, except this time they were about two of the most powerful men in the land, Cardinal Thomas Wolsey and King Henry VIII. Word reached the Cardinal, and he just had to meet her. Elizabeth met with the Cardinal and told him all about her visions. He was particularly interested in the vision of him. She told him that she saw 3 swords, one for his religious power, one for his power in the country, and one for his ability to grant a divorce from Queen Catherine. The Cardinal was astounded and couldn't keep this to himself, so he arranged for Elizabeth to meet with the king himself. At the meeting, she provided him with a list of instructions for how he should conduct himself, both politically and personally. Her list included demands that he should stay married to his poor wife, Queen Catherine. The king wasn't used to taking orders from females, and he outwardly dismissed her as a crazy nun with eccentric visions. Nevertheless, Henry was a suspicious man and ordered that his spies follow her and report on her every move. Elizabeth may not have realised it yet, but she was playing a dangerous game. Elizabeth's prophecies were catching the attention of people from all tiers of Tudor society. One such gentleman, a friar named Father Rich Hugh, was also a staunch ally of Queen Catherine. Father Hugh told the Queen all about Elizabeth's powers and encouraged her to meet the fortune-telling nun. However, Queen Catherine was an intelligent woman, and she declined, knowing that such a meeting would implicate her in committing a treasonous act against King Henry. Elizabeth was loving her newly found fame. She decided she wanted to meet her adoring fans, so she embarked on a tour of the country. Travelling from town to town, the fame continued to grow on a national scale, and soon the whole country was talking about her. Feeling pretty good about herself and perhaps a little drunk on her fame, in 1532 Elizabeth met with King Henry again. At this meeting, she told Henry that she had received divine messages about his private life and that God was mightily unimpressed with his plans to divorce Queen Catherine. She told him that God was so upset that if he proceeded he would take away his crown and kill him. Henry was becoming less enamoured with Elizabeth with every meeting. Soon after, Henry discovered that Anne was pregnant. So plans for marriage were made, and as the new head of the English Church, he finally had the authority he needed to divorce Queen Catherine. With the new Protestant reforms in full swing, Elizabeth was proving to be less of an entertaining curiosity and more of a direct threat to Henry. In 1533, the Chancellor of England, Sir Thomas More, warned Elizabeth that if she didn't stop, Henry would punish her. Nevertheless, one of Elizabeth's faithful supporters couldn't help but prod the beast and decided to publish a book of her predictions. Elizabeth was now truly in the proverbial muck. She could no longer be dismissed as a wacky nun with a ton of laughable delusions. She was now officially a treasonous thorn in Henry's side. The publication of the book was the final straw. Henry had to deal with her. In the autumn of 1533, Elizabeth was imprisoned on charges of treason in the Tower of London, along with 5 of her supporters, one of whom was the ally of Queen Catherine, Father Hugh. The charges were issued owing to Elizabeth's malicious opposition of the divorce and her suggestion that the king would be dethroned. It's believed that Elizabeth and Father Hugh were jointly arrested in the hope that they would supply testimony implicating Queen Catherine. Fortunately for Queen Catherine, no such testimony was obtained. Whilst in the Tower, Elizabeth must have realised how much trouble she was in, because she suddenly claimed that she had another message from God. This time, he said that she should just say that she made the whole thing up. Her captors didn't buy it. Eventually, and likely under torture, she confessed that every single one of her visions had been a fabrication and that she had just got carried away. The confession in private wasn't enough. Elizabeth was forced to publicly confess to a crowd of thousands in the City of London. However, even a public confession on this scale wasn't enough for Henry. Her prophecies were so scandalous and topical that they had the capacity to incite national uprisings against the king. Henry couldn't risk a rebellion, so he sent her on another tour of the country, except this time it was on his terms. Elizabeth was escorted across the country by armed guard. She was taken from town to town and forced to publicly confess to her lies. It worked, and her fans across the realm soon began to doubt her. Unfortunately for Elizabeth, even a public penance on this scale wasn't enough to save her. A bill charging Elizabeth and her supporters with high treason was passed in March 1534. They were found to be guilty, and an execution scheduled at Tyburn on the 20th of April. On the scaffold, she told a crowd of people that she was entirely responsible, not only for her own death, but those of her supporters as well. Henry and his band of bullies were, if nothing, PR gurus. The execution was scheduled to happen at the same time that the citizens of London were swearing an oath to Anne as the rightful Queen of England. She was hanged, and after death, her head was removed and placed on a pike on London Bridge, giving her the unenviable reputation of being the only woman in history to have been dishonoured in this way. Elizabeth's execution was not just revenge. It was a strategy for making sure that the people of London were loyal to their new queen, whilst also smearing Elizabeth's name for years to come. It worked. She was never made into a saint, and she was almost forgotten by history. Almost. So what do you think? Was Elizabeth Barton a heroic martyr, a sickly delusional woman, or an out-and-out liar? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, don't forget to click like and hit the subscribe button. See you next time.